American 11, are you trying to call?
The cockpit is not answering their phone. Our number 1 has been staffed, and our 5 has been staffed.
Hey, I'm going to call from Washington. I am in a situation with American 11, a possible hijack.
I'm on the 83rd floor. I'm going to die, aren't I? No. Say I'm going to die. Ma'am, say your prayers. You're going to take positive because you're going to help me.
September 11th, 2001. We all know it as 9/11, a day that tore through the heart of America and shattered the belief that we were safe within our own borders. This wasn't just an attack on buildings. It was a calculated strike against everything we stand for, our freedoms, our institutions, our way of life. And it exposed a painful truth, that behind our sense of security was a system unprepared and a nation caught off guard. With chilling precision, 19 terrorists, trained, funded, and driven by hatred, executed a plan years in the making, while the most powerful intelligence network in the world failed to connect the dots in time. In this opening episode of Threat Level Red, we return to that morning, not just to remember what happened, but to uncover what Americans never knew. The ignored warnings, the missed signals, the systemic failures that let it all unfold. We'll pull back the curtain on the lead-up, the collapse, both physical and institutional, and the aftermath that still echoes today. Because the threat that struck us on 9/11 didn't end when the towers fell. It simply evolved. So to understand 9/11, you have to start long before the planes took off.
Welcome to Threat Level Red, a Charles Denyer Productions podcast. Every week, Charles brings his real-world expertise to the front lines of America's most pressing threats. Cyber attacks, extremist networks, rogue states, terrorism, economic instability, systemic breakdowns, and so much more. From the digital battleground to the streets of America, no threat is left uncovered. No spin, no filters, just intel.
What happened on that September morning in 2001, it wasn't random and it wasn't impulsive. It was methodical, calculated, and it took years to plan. The group responsible, Al-Qaeda, was led by a man none other than Osama bin Laden. Born into Saudi wealth, trained in Afghanistan, radicalized by war, and obsessed with the destruction of the West, particularly the United States. His mission was clear: to hit America, not just militarily, but symbolically. So if you think about it, from Osama bin Laden's eyes, the World Trade Center represented economic power. The Pentagon, well, that represented military power. The U.S. Capitol, or the White House, targets we now know were intended for the fourth plane, well, that represented political power. Strike all three, which was his intent, and you don't just create chaos. You deliver a clear message: nowhere is safe. And to do it all, they used our own freedoms against us. 15 of the 19 hijackers, well, they're from Saudi Arabia. They obtained legal visas. They trained at American flight schools in Florida, Arizona, Minnesota. They went to the gym. They shopped at Walmart. They did everything that everyday Americans would do. They looked normal. But behind those closed doors, they were preparing for death and destruction. The hijackers were divided into teams. Each had a designated pilot trained to take control of the aircraft. The others were what we call muscle. Their job was to storm the cockpit, overpower the crew, and subdue passengers using box cutters and fake bomb vests. Remember, this is 9/11. The cockpits didn't lock like they do today. And here's the part no one wants to really talk about. We could have stopped them. The warning signs weren't just there, they were blinking red. In July 2001, just 2 months before the attacks, FBI Special Agent Kenneth Williams in Phoenix sent a memo that should have set off alarm bells. It warned that several Middle Eastern men, possibly tied to extremist groups, were enrolling in U.S. flight schools. He urged the FBI to investigate whether this was part of a coordinated effort by Al-Qaeda to gain aviation training inside our country. The memo made it all the way to FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. It was read, it was filed, and then it was ignored. Then came Zachary Moussaoui. He's a French national who raised red flags in a Minnesota flight school in 2001. Why? Well, let's see. He paid cash, and then he insisted on learning how to fly large jets, but had zero interest in learning how to take off or land. His behavior was so disturbing, instructors feared he was planning to use an aircraft as a weapon. What did they do? They contacted the FBI. He was arrested on immigration charges, but the request to search his laptop was denied. Why? Because of legal concerns and bureaucratic red tape, and because the agents in Minnesota weren't told what the others already knew. Even more damning, the CIA had been tracking two of the eventual hijackers since January 2000. They watched them attend a terror summit in Malaysia. No kidding. They knew these men had links to top al-Qaeda members. They even knew they had entered the United States. But what did they do with that information? Nothing. The CIA never informed the FBI, the agency responsible for tracking threats on American soil. Meanwhile, these two men were living openly in San Diego, renting an apartment under their real names. They took flying lessons. They even listed their names in the local phone book. No disguises, no aliases, no hiding. And yet, no one stopped them. Then, incredibly, on August 6, 2001, President George W. Bush got a CIA briefing. It came with a serious warning. The title, Bin Laden Determined to Strike in U.S. This daily brief, which the president is given on a daily basis, said Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda were planning an attack on American soil. It wasn't vague. It mentioned suspicious activity right here in the U.S., including signs that terrorists were preparing to hijack planes. It also said they might use explosives. Some of the intel dated as far back as 1997. It came from secret sources, foreign governments, and even news reports. President Bush got this warning 36 days before the 9/11 attacks. Since then, the brief has sparked a lot of debate. Many believe the U.S. government didn't act strongly enough on the warning. The National Security Archives later released the full document to the public. And then, just 2 days before the attacks, a Maryland state trooper pulled over one of the hijackers for speeding. The guy was driving over 90 miles an hour on a rural section of Interstate 95. No outstanding warrants, no watch list alerts. So the officer did what any officer would do. He wrote him a ticket and let him go. After 9/11, investigators found the rental car parked at Newark International Airport, where Flight 93 had departed. Inside the glove box, you guessed it, the speeding ticket. Still there, untouched, unread. All the signs were there. All the dots were on the map, but no one connected them. Because agencies weren't communicating. Because intelligence was siloed. Because the very idea of commercial jets as weapons seemed too far-fetched, too outrageous, even for known terrorists. We weren't just unprepared. We were in absolute denial. And that denial, more than anything, helped 19 men bring America to its knees on 9/11. The entire plan, known as the Planes Operation by bin Laden's Inner Circle, relied on one thing: America's inability to imagine it happening. And the early hours of September 11th, 2001, they proved us wrong, dead wrong. So September 11th, 2001, it began like any other morning. Blue skies over New York, no threat alerts, no warnings. The country was calm, unaware that in the skies, 4 commercial airliners had already been hijacked. At 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 crashes into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. A Boeing 767, traveling at 400 miles per hour, loaded with jet fuel. The impact, it tears through floors 93 to 99. Hundreds are killed instantly. Hundreds more are trapped above the impact zone with no way out. At first, news anchors report a small plane crash. A horrible accident, no doubt. But 17 minutes later, it all changes. 9:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175 slams into the South Tower. This is no accident. This is war. The second impact is captured on live television, and I remember it. I was actually in Washington, D.C. just outside the grounds of the Pentagon on 9/11. So I do remember this whole horrific day playing out, by the way. In terms of that second impact, America, and really the entire world, watches in horror as the fireball explodes from the side of the tower. People begin jumping from windows 80, 90 stories high. Office workers, mothers, fathers, choosing to leap to their death rather than burn alive. And New York's first responders, firefighters, paramedics, police, well, they charge into the towers, climbing stairwell after stairwell, knowing they may never come out. And many of them did not. President Bush, some 955 miles away from Washington, D.C., he's at the Emma E. Booker Elementary School in Sarasota, Florida. Why? To promote his No Child Left Behind Act. He stopped and delivered chilling news to the parents, teachers, and students present that morning.
Today, we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country.
At 9:37 a.m., the horror spreads to Washington. American Airlines Flight 77, a Boeing 757, crashes into the west side of the Pentagon, the heart of the U.S. military. 64 people on board, 125 inside the building. They're all gone. Inside the White House, Vice President Cheney is rushed underground. President George W. Bush, still airborne at Air Force One, authorizes full military alert. And you have to remember, when all this is going on, there was communication problems between the president and the vice president. That was one of the biggest failures of 9/11. At this time, fighter jets scramble. We now know the nation is under attack, and no one knows how many more planes are still in the air. At 9:59 a.m., the unthinkable happens. The South Tower, the second one hit, it collapses.
Oh my God, there it goes!
It disintegrates in 10 seconds. A wall of debris and dust rushed through Manhattan like a tidal wave. Survivors run for their lives, choking on ash. Those very sounds, that collapse, is something first responders still hear in their dreams. Then, 10:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 93 crashes into a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania.
Aircraft go north as fast as you can.
United 93, have you got information on that yet?
Yeah, he's down.
He's down?
Yes.
When did he land?
He did not land.
Oh, he's down?
Yes,
Down?
somewhere up northeast of Camp David.
Its target was believed to be the U.S. Capitol or the White House. But the passengers fought back. They stormed the cockpit. They forced the plane down. Every soul aboard died, but they saved countless lives on the ground. American civilians, ordinary people. In 30 minutes, they made the ultimate sacrifice and became the first counterattack in the War on Terror. And then, at 10:28 a.m., the North Tower collapses. The skyline of New York forever changed. Nearly 3,000 people killed, thousands more injured. And the ripple effects, political, emotional, cultural, they're still with us today. For many Americans, time stopped that morning. I know it did for me. But for those of us in national security, that moment wasn't the end. It was the beginning. When the smoke cleared over New York, when the fires were still burning at the Pentagon, when we realized United Flight 93 had been forced down by everyday heroes, America woke up to a new reality. We weren't untouchable. In that moment of fear, grief, and anger, we changed. That evening, on September 11th, President Bush addressed the country from the Oval Office, attempting as best as possible to console a grieving nation, but also sending a very stern warning to our enemies.
We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them.
On September 12th, 2001, the United States, we became a nation at war. But this wasn't against a country. It was against an ideology, against a shadow army, against enemies who didn't wear uniforms, who didn't fight fair, and who didn't care about dying. Just days after the devastating September 11th, 2001 attacks, President Bush traveled to Ground Zero in New York City. Amid the smoldering ruins, surrounded by exhausted rescue workers, firefighters, and police officers, Bush delivered a speech that would become one of the most iconic moments of his presidency. Standing atop the rubble beside retired firefighter Bob Beckwith and using a bullhorn to address the crowd, Bush spoke directly to the first responders and the nation. His words, echoing through the wreckage, became a rallying cry for unity, resilience, and resolve in the face of unimaginable loss.
I can hear you, the rest of the world hears you, and the people who knocked these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
And so, the American response was massive, swift, relentless, and global. Just 5 days after the attacks, on September 16, 2001, Vice President Dick Cheney appeared on Meet the Press with Tim Russert. The nation was still reeling, smoke was still rising from ground zero, and families were still hoping for survivors. But the tone that morning, it was very clear. This was war. And America's response would not be limited to chasing down those who hijacked planes. It would extend far beyond the perpetrators.
The president's determination to also go after those nations and organizations and people that lend support to these terrorist operators.
This statement laid the early groundwork for what would become known as the Bush Doctrine. You're either with us or you're with the terrorists.
So it's going to be vital for us to use any means at our disposal, basically, to achieve our objective.
The administration was signaling a new kind of war, not against a nation state, but against a stateless enemy operating across borders. Hidden in cells, embedded in cities, often supported by governments in the shadows. This moment on national television wasn't just a media appearance, not at all. It was a clear declaration, a message to adversaries, allies, and Americans alike. And what was it? The gloves were coming off. Within weeks, U.S. forces would be preparing for the invasion of Afghanistan, launching a war that would become the longest in American history. The machinery of surveillance, drone warfare, and targeted killing would expand dramatically. And it all began with this chilling acknowledgement from the vice president. This wasn't just retaliation, it was the beginning of a new era. The Patriot Act would pass by the end of October, radically transforming surveillance law and redefining the balance between security and privacy and liberty. So we had warrantless wiretaps, bulk data collection, secret orders. However, in my opinion, and understandably so, to be fair, it all was in the name of national security to protect the nation. Yes, airports became fortresses. Yes, intelligence agencies were given sweeping powers. I mean, the Department of Homeland Security, which didn't even exist before 9/11, was now a massive federal agency where other agencies were swept under its direction. At the same time, a very new phrase entered our vocabulary: the global war on terror. After that dust settled in lower Manhattan and the Pentagon was still smoldering, America was preparing for war, but not just in Afghanistan. Very quickly, the Bush administration began turning its attention toward Saddam Hussein and Iraq. In the months following 9/11, U.S. officials began linking Iraq to the growing threat of global terrorism. The message was clear and consistent. Saddam Hussein was dangerous, he was defiant, and, according to the administration, he had weapons of mass destruction. From late 2001 through early 2003, the rhetoric intensified. Senior officials, including Vice President Cheney, Defense Secretary Rumsfeld, and President Bush himself, warned of chemical, biological, and even nuclear weapon programs hidden deep inside Iraq. The phrase, "We don't want the smoking gun to be a mushroom cloud," do you remember that? That became a key talking point. That was a phrase stated by Condoleezza Rice. Then came a very crucial moment. On February 5th, 2003, Secretary of State Colin Powell addresses the United Nations Security Council. In front of the world, Powell delivered a detailed and forceful case for war. He presented satellite images, intercepted communications, and descriptions of mobile biological weapons labs. He spoke of deception, noncompliance, terrorist links. His speech was intended to do one thing: rally international support for military action against Iraq. At the time, it seemed convincing, urgent, necessary. But history would tell a very different story. Regardless, 18 months after 9/11, we invaded Iraq.
On my orders, coalition forces have begun striking selected targets of military importance to undermine Saddam Hussein's ability to wage war.
The justification? Weapons of mass destruction, a connection to al-Qaeda. However, we found no weapons of mass destruction, and the link between Saddam Hussein and 9/11, it turned out to be weak at best, if any. So, was the invasion worth it? Well, some say yes, but recent opinion polls taken 2 decades after the war started say an overwhelming number of Americans, as high as 65%, say no, the invasion was not worth it. In the years following the 2003 invasion of Iraq, we witnessed a destabilized Middle East, the rise of ISIS, along with large military and even larger civilian casualties. And we spent trillions of dollars across 2 decades of war. And still, the terror didn't stop. Yes, we have not had another major terrorist attack anywhere in this nation the likes of 9/11. And yes, America should be grateful for President Bush's efforts and Presidents Obama, Biden, and Trump in protecting America. But there have still been attacks against us and against our allies. We couldn't stop the London attacks in 2005. We couldn't stop the Paris attacks in 2015, or at home, San Bernardino, Orlando, Fort Hood. The face of terrorism evolved. Lone wolves, radicalized youth, social media recruitment. And let's not forget that before 9/11, government access to private communications like email generally required a warrant. In the years since, surveillance capabilities have expanded, largely in response to new and evolving security threats. The NSA, once more limited in what it could do, could now collect, and understandably so for the broader good of the country, use this information to help monitor global communications. These changes, again, were introduced with the intent of keeping the country safe. And in the wake of 9/11, the landscape of national security shifted, and with it, the approach to surveillance. So, as a society, we continue to navigate the balance between protecting our freedoms and ensuring our safety. Look, this I do know. Every day, dedicated professionals, analysts, agents, soldiers, civil servants in America's intelligence agency apparatus, they work selflessly behind the scenes to protect the nation. We entrust them with extraordinary responsibilities, and they carry those duties out with integrity, precision, and a deep sense of purpose. Still, the question remains, how do we balance liberty with security? It's not a question with easy answers. It's a conversation that continues to evolve, shaped by thoughtful voices on both sides. I get it. I really do. I get both sides of the coin here. I mean, some say we've gone too far. Others say we haven't done enough. What's clear is this: the search for balance is ongoing. And for many, it's still uncertain whether we've truly found it. It's been 24 years since 9/11, and every year we ask the same question: are we safer now? And the answer, it's not that simple. In some ways, yes, another large-scale terror attack like 9/11 has been prevented. That's not luck. That's the result of intense surveillance, military pressure overseas, and dozens of plots stopped before they could materialize, many of them you don't know about. But here's the truth. Our enemies didn't go away. Well, they've adapted. Al-Qaeda was beaten back, but not eliminated. As for ISIS, well, they rose from the ashes in Iraq and Syria, spreading like wildfire through the internet, radicalizing young men and women not just abroad, but right here at home. The threat today is no longer just foreign operatives slipping through our borders. It's not. It's American citizens. Yeah, U.S. citizens, born and raised in this country, but who became radicalized in the dark corners of the web, inspired by propaganda, ready to kill for a cause most of us can't even understand. They don't need instructions from a terror cell in Pakistan. All they need is Wi-Fi. And then there's the cyber threat. No planes, no bombs, no blood on the sidewalk, just a laptop and the right code. China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, they're in our networks. power grids, water systems, hospitals, banks. They don't need to fire a missile. They can shut down a city with a keystroke. And while we're focused on border walls and airport lines, all of which are important, don't get me wrong, our enemies are inside the wire. Cyber attacks are the new battleground, and we're not winning. Add to that the threat of bioterrorism, economic warfare, psychological operations on social media, deepfakes, the use of AI, and suddenly it's not just about suicide bombers anymore. It's about disinformation, sabotage, infiltration, collapse. So again, I ask you, are we safer now? Well, safer from what exactly? From hijackers? Maybe. From what's coming next? Well, that's a different story. The truth is, we've spent billions on defense. We've built entire government agencies. We've killed bin Laden. We've toppled regimes. But the enemies of America, well, they're still here. Some sit in far-off bunkers. Others live down the street. And the biggest threat we face today probably might not come from the skies. It might come from inside the house. In our next episode of Threat Level Red, where's the plane? The disappearance of Malaysian Airlines Flight 370. 239 people vanished without a trace. No distress call, no debris, just silence. A modern aircraft disappears, and we still don't know why. Thanks for listening. I'm your host, Charles Denyer. This is Threat Level Red.
Threat Level Red is a Charles Denyer Productions podcast. For more information, visit charlesdenyer.com to learn more about current and upcoming podcasts and episodes, current and future book publications, professional services offered by Charles, and much more. All opinions expressed are those of the host and do not reflect the official positions of any government agency, military branch, or national security organization.